something we all need. Gotta have it now if you wanna succeed. Striving, surviving, that's no doubt. Sticking together, we gon' find a way out. To all you young people, give it your all. To all you young people, give it your all. To all you young people, give it your all. To all you young people, give it your all.
Good afternoon, back community. Thank you guys, as always, for staying involved and staying engaged. Tonight, I happen to have an Albany legend, and I don't say that lightly. This man has been a part, I like to say he is a historic artifact to the Capital District area. I have Mzee Lloyd Stewart, who I would like to dive into his story tonight to be able to tell you guys about his path, the creations that he has brought to light, and as well as his humongous family, as we will dive into later. So Mzee, thank you for giving me your time tonight, sir, and I truly appreciate it. I look forward to telling your story to the back community. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate being pulled out of the closet and dusted off. But no, it's a real pleasure. I've heard a lot about your programming and know a number of the people who you've interviewed in the past, and there's nothing but good things that they say about what you're doing and your work in the community.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There are a big shoes to follow, and yours will be some big shoes as well. So, you know, I just want to do my part in the larger scheme of things to ensure that Albany, or the Capital District area, is left in good hands. But yeah, man, let me see. What I always like to get into is giving the back community the opportunity to get to know you. So I always start off with saying, Mzee, so, you know, what do you do now? I know right now you've entered another season of life. So but what do you do now? Are there any passion projects that you're working on? And what part of Albany did you grow up in?
Okay, I'll take those one at a time. Right now I'm just doing reading and writing. I've published 2 books and maybe about 15, 16 articles in newspapers or journals or things along those lines. All of it on African and African American history, but mostly focused on New York State. And I've been broadening my my research lately. Back when I was in college or right out of college, I was doing a lot of research on African history and African history in the diaspora, in particular Brazil, and then some in terms of the Caribbean, but mostly New York State. But I've been broadening it lately and trying to get as much knowledge as I can. Trying to put it down on paper so I could share it, because my biggest passion, I guess you'd say, is trying to make sure that we as African people know our history, that we understand who we are as the original people, who we are as far as the contributors, the developers, the initiators of civilization in this world. At one point in time, we were the only people on this planet. And we were the ones who migrated throughout the course of the world, throughout the diaspora, and developed all that exists as far as the human beings are concerned. So it's important for our young people to understand that they are divine in their nature, that they are the ones who brought this world together, that they and their ancestors are the foundation for human beings on this planet, in this universe, as so far as we know. I'm trying very hard to figure out ways of educating. I'm finding that it's important right now for me to develop as much knowledge that I can, to put it down on paper, and then be able to teach it or demonstrate it in schools or community centers or things along those lines. I don't want to go in there with conversation where, well, Africans did this and Africans did that. I want to at least be able to document that all of that does in fact exist. That the knowledge of who we are has been hidden from us. In many instances, there's been attempts to try and destroy that history, to keep it as far away from us as they could, in an effort to assist in subjugating us and oppressing us across the continent, across the world, the diaspora. There isn't anywhere in this world where people of African descent are not. There isn't anywhere in this world where people of African descent were not. And it's important for young people and middle-aged people and older people to understand how dynamic we are, how divine we are, how important to the development of the world and civilization we are as a people. So that there's no need to look down on ourselves, that we are what is important. There's a philosophy in Africa called Ubuntu, and that we've adopted it, my family has adopted it as a motto. And it says basically that I am because of we are, therefore I am. All that exists and all that has existed in the past, as far as civilization is concerned, as far as people on this planet are concerned, begins with Africa and people of African descent. And it's important for us to be able to understand that and develop that and be able to teach that to our children. I'm actually going to turn this phone off here.
All right.
So.
Okay, you were telling me about which part of Albany you grew up in. I'm not going to let you go away without that.
Yes. Initially, I was born on First Street in Albany, right across from the St. Joseph's Church Park, that little park that they have there off St. Joseph's Terrace, would run right into my house on First Street.
Yeah, right above Timbrook.
Yes, exactly. One block above. Everybody's trying to get a hold of me right now. Sorry about that.
Everybody's probably waiting for this interview. They probably saying, "I'm trying to watch it. How do I see it?"
Well, you'd have to tell them that. But anyway, First Street, I was there. I lived there for the first 10 years of my life, and then we moved to the projects. On Colony Street, the newly built projects. Now, there is no reason why this thing needs to keep going like this. Of course, it would be working like that now. Okay. Sorry about this.
Oh, don't worry about that, man.
Okay, so we grew up on First Street. I was there for maybe the first 8 or 10 years of my life. And then we moved to the newly built Colony Street projects. And I lived there all the way through high school and college. And then about the second year of college, I got married and had my first child. And we actually moved back into the projects again. because it was an easy way to live. They were very inexpensive at that point in time. So a new family was able to deal with it easily in terms of it. And then the children started coming, and we needed to find a bigger place than in the projects. And we bought a house on Sheridan Avenue, and we lived there with a friend of mine. We bought a joint house. So those are the places I grew up in, actually. So I'm an Arbor Hill native.
Oh yeah.
I'm third generation Albany native. I'm a ninth generation native of New York State. And as I mentioned to you earlier, my family has been in New York State, or the area that would be called New York State, since the early 1700s. And most of the research that I'm doing now beyond African history is on my family. And I've been working on that for the past 20 years. I began with my grandmother, who at the time was 93 years old. And I figured we needed to get something down on paper, to get a record of our family. And particularly because of how long we had been here. And she was willing, she was very feisty 93-year-old lady. She's the one that actually got our family involved in community service and community work, that taught us that it was important to give back. It's always important to be a part of what's going on in your community, and using whatever resources or skills that you have to try and make things better. And she had worked in community organizations from the time she came to Albany from Troy. And as a matter of fact, she was on the board of directors of the Parsons Child Care Center when she was 93 years old. So she set the example, and it was followed by my mother, and then from my mother it went on to my sister, myself, and my brothers. So we've been community active from the time we were born on one level or another.
Okay, it's actually one of the things that I found most interesting about you. Once I was introduced to your name, was your family's historic significance to Alpha Phi Alpha. Correct me if I'm wrong, but was one of your family members, I want to say either your mom or your grandma, they were the caretaker for George Biddle Kelly, one of the jewels of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity?
Yes, absolutely. It was my grandmother.
Okay.
Actually, my mother, they were actually live-ins. My grandfather, grandmother, and my mother lived in his house in Troy, and took care of him for a number of years until he passed. Yeah. Yeah. And the interesting thing about it was, until I went to college, I didn't know anything about Alpha Phi Alpha or George Biddle Kelly or anything else along those lines. And ironically, down the street from me on First Street was Mr. Poyer, Mr. George Poyer, who was an Alpha. And after I went over, across the burning sands and all of that, I was home, and I ran into him, and he had heard, because the community of Albany is very small.
Yes,
and
sir.
Information passes very quickly. The grapevine, if you will. So he sought me out, and he gave me the handshake and everything, and it was a very thrilling, almost spiritual kind of feeling, because I had known him all my life. And he was one of those adults, those men that you run into, and you don't ever want to do anything wrong in front of them, because they will check you. And this was a time where we were we were brothers. We had reached a new level, and he treated me like that afterwards as well. So it was a very moving kind of experience to first run into him like that, but then also it had its spiritualness in it because we developed a relationship that we hadn't had before, because his son and I were best friends.
Okay.
But our relationship really didn't exist at all because he was his father. You know how it is with the father. But it became good, and that's one of the positive things that I got out of being an alpha.
Okay. Okay. My story was similar, and I remember I didn't know anything about fraternities and sororities prior to me going down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and going to Johnson C. Smith. And it was there where I got exposed to Greek life. And I remember, I'm probably going off on a tangent, but I remember when I first came home, after I graduated, I came back and I ran into some brothers that were involved in the graduate chapter there. And I was telling them what I was getting ready to do with my mentoring program that I was running in Charlotte and how I was going to implement it here in Albany. And one of the comments I had got at the time was just like, well, we got this going on, or, you might step on our feet. And I had said something similar to what you had said. It was just like, well, I'm from Albany. I've been in Albany my entire life, and I didn't know anything about Alpha, right? So it was just like, well, I hope and plan through what I'm doing to be able to connect Alpha with the heart of Albany, because Albany is near and dear to me. And it was just like, that was my first indoctrination to it. My relationships definitely got a lot better after that, just because we got that the brotherhood. But not knowing about Greek life, a lot of people from upstate, I think they may have a better understanding of it now, but I know for a fact I didn't, and it seems like you didn't either prior to going to Columbia.
Right.
But yeah, so it's just like, we have so much history just in Greek fraternities and sororities alone. And there's so many different parts of the community that we don't even know about. Like your family's rich history there, or you crossing the burning sands and then being able to have a deepened brotherhood. Was it Mr. Poirier?
Yes.
And it's just like, we have a lot of sleeping or hidden jewels that go on and move on around us every day, and we don't know understand this deep connection. That's why I love your connection with history. I love your study of Africa. How did you come to studying Africana studies, or why?
Well, I began actually my last year of high school. It was 1968, and everything was going on at that point in time. The marches, the murders. There was I've been a member of a church for most of my youth, and the Episcopal Church actually. And one day I'm watching TV, and I see this Black couple who had gone down the South somewhere to visit their relatives, and they decided to go to their Episcopal. They were Episcopalians, and they decided to go to Episcopal Church. And as soon as they walked in the church, the service stopped. The people in the church turned around, they grabbed them, and they literally threw them out of the church. And this was on TV. It was live. Back in those days, there was such brutality and violence that went on, that was on TV that you could see. Beyond the murders that took place, it was just the day-to-day kinds of marches and then the fire hoses and things along those lines. But that hurt me deeply. And I began to search at that point in time for a different spiritual life. And it brought me to the African sacred sciences. And that's when I first started studying the African sacred sciences when I was at junior in high school. And so I began to read about the history. And when I went to Africa, I had this professor who came there. This was when I went to college, I had this professor. His name was Hollis Lynch. Columbia had just opened up the school, if you will, to African Americans. So our class, freshman class, was the largest they had ever had. And they figured the easiest way to be able to deal with all these young African Americans was to hire some Black faculty. And they hired maybe 3 or 4. And one of them was Hollis Lynch. And he taught African and African American history. And the interesting thing about him, something that I'll never forget, is his first day of school, he had like 4 graduate assistants come into the class with these great big crates that were full of Xerox copies of articles, of newspaper articles, of articles from journals, all on Black history. But it was a history of the diaspora of people of African descent. And he passed it out to the class. So I had when I left Columbia, I had a trunk full of these articles that he had passed out. And as a matter of fact, to this day, I still have that trunk full of those articles. And so he would be the one who inspired me to my love of history, and particularly of African history and African American history. So I got exposed to it through him on that kind of deep, intense kind of level. And I wasn't a reader. Matter of fact, I hated to read. I'd be in classes in grammar school, and you know, when you're sitting in a circle and you're reading, and the teacher gives everybody a little part that they read out of a book. So I'd skip ahead to the part that I was going to read, and I'd read it to myself over and over and over again, so that when it came my time to read it, I'd sound like I was actually a reader, but I wasn't. I probably read like 3-4 books all through high school. But when I got to Columbia, and because of his influence, that's all I did, was get books on history of Africa, history of African Americans, history of the diaspora, and it became a part of who I am. And so it just became who I am and what I did. And I would do it all the time. And it really surprised me that I had written 2 books, because I was a person who wouldn't read a book. But it's important, I think, there are books all over my house. Actually, my wife.
Right behind you. Don't worry, I was coming right back there. You got quite the collection right behind you.
Actually, my wife uses books to decorate. She is interior decorator. She has those skills, and she uses books for it, mainly because of our children and our grandchildren. That if they see it, they may pick it up, they may start reading it. That it's important for them to be able to increase their knowledge. And most of the books, all of the books actually, are about African history or African American history, because that's the part of our education that's been denied us. And we try and make it real to them.
Yep. Even just hearing you talk about Africa, when you say that for your grandkids, you want to make it real to them. They get a chance to live vicariously through your stories. And I studied abroad for a while, so I lived in Morocco, and I know you did extensive traveling throughout. I want to say South Africa, if I remember right, in my reading about you. But
I lived in South Africa.
You lived in South Africa. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So going to Africa was a game changer for me, and just being able to, one, see this place up close in person, feel this place up close in person that we only typically hear about. And, one of the things I learned was that Mesopotamia, or the land between two rivers, that's the one thing they will always teach you in history growing up in school. They be like, it'll make you believe that it's this far off place. But when I went to Morocco was the first time that I actually was able to pinpoint it and realize that that far off place that they kept describing about was actually modern day Iraq. And it was just like, once you get a chance to see it and feel it and to draw connections, it means something different to you. So like for your grandkids, like I love what your wife's doing. They're going to learn directly or indirectly. And even if they don't want to, just because, it's placed there. And it means something different to you when you can draw that connection. And that connection for them is definitely going to be you.
Yeah. Well, what you're saying is it hits home, because when my children graduated or went off to college, I decided that it was time for me to see Africa, to prove to myself that Africa was actually real, that it was actually there, that there was something out there that I read about, that I learned about, called Africa. And I wanted to prove to myself that it was there. I had to see it. So I picked up, I quit my job. I found a program that would get me over there. Once I was there, I found a job there. I lived in South Africa for 2 years. Prior to going to South Africa, I went on a study tour to Kemet, to Egypt, and to Ghana with ASCAP, which is the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations.
Okay.
And it's the organization that was started by Ben Johannan and Dr. Clark and Asa Hilliard and all of the idols that there are, that we have for our history, whose books I had all written from cover to cover 2 and 3, 4 times a piece, and got to go with some of them to Africa and have the classes that they would teach us each evening on the sites that we saw during the course of the day. And it was probably the most inspiring 3 weeks that I ever had. And then we came back. On our way back, we stopped in Ghana for the ASCAP conference, which was an international conference. And there were all these lecturers on Africa. And that's the first time I had seen Van Sertima, the gentleman who
is
did
that the Pink Panther?
The Pink Panther.
They I want to say Alvin Van Sertima. His skin was a lighter complexion. Sometimes they would call him the Pink Panther. Is that the same one?
Maybe, yeah. The one who wrote the history about the Olmec people and the history of African Americans in Mexico and South America. Ivan Van Sertima.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But it was, it just changed my, it focused me more, because now I knew it was there. It was actually there. And I saw the sites. And we took a number of study tours when I was living in South Africa to Zimbabwe and Lesotho and Namibia, just to see as much of Africa as I can, to just gobble it up, if you will. And it was a very interesting period of time. Now, the interesting thing about it is I was there for almost 2 years. If you ask my children how long I was there, some of them will tell you I was there for 5 years. Some of them would say I was there for like 7 years. But it was good, because it meant that they missed me during that period of time. But it was important for me for them as well, for me to go during that period of time, and bring back to them the knowledge that I had gained, the history that I had learned, to help them in terms of understanding who they are and what they are about as well. I teach them that inside of them are their ancestors. And it's been proven that it's true because the DNA that they have inside of them comes from their ancestors. It's passed down from generation to generation. So that it is their ancestors are a part of them. And all of the history that we have is a part of us, physically, spiritually. So that we need to know what it is. We already know inside of ourselves our history, but it's important for us to see it and accept it and understand it for what it truly is. And it moves us to a different level in terms of our ability to be able to make real change on this planet, because we come from the original people. And our history is the history of the world.
Yes, sir. Okay. Okay. I like it. Let me see. As a world traveler, and I know you talked about even for your kids being away for 2 years felt like 5 years to them. But how did your friendships and bonds that you formed growing up in Albany impact your adulthood?
Well, that's an interesting question. There are friends, there are people who I have friends who I call family, brothers, who I've been friends with for over 50 years. Others have moved away. A lot of people move away from Albany, including my children. None of my children live in Albany anymore. They're all over the country, which is good because it gives me a chance now to travel in the United States. But as far as the friends are concerned, they have helped me understand myself better, in terms of who I was and what I thought back when I was younger. They've taught me so much in terms of my growth as a human being, as a man, as examples in terms of how a man should exist on this planet as far as his children are concerned. I was a single father for a long period of time. And I learned that modeling, like you were saying in your program, the modeling, from a friend of mine, a very first close friend of mine named Norman McConney, because he was the first one that I ever knew who as a man raised his children. And then there became a time where that opportunity was provided for me as well. And I think it was an opportunity because it wasn't just that I was raising them, they were raising me.
Yes, sir.
And I learned as much from them as they may have learned from me. And it helped both of us grow, all of us grow. And we became a very close-knit family and still are. My oldest daughter just got married about 3-4 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah, in Maryland. And I officiated the ceremony. Her and her fiance asked me if I would, quote unquote, marry them. And I went through the process of becoming ordained in order to be able to do that. But it was the most spiritual kind of experience beyond my own marriage that I had had in a long time. And particularly it was appropriate because it's been 1.5 years since I had seen my family, with none of them living in Albany. They're in Maryland, they're in Houston, they're in Asheville, they're in Miami. They're all over the United States. I hadn't seen them in 1.5 years because of the pandemic. And this wedding, this marriage, this arusi, as we call it, was an opportunity for us to come together for the first time in a year and a half and see each other,
Nice.
to hold my grandchildren, to talk to my children. It was a very spiritual thing that I'm still carrying with me.
Nice.
And
Nice.
that's because my children and I are very close because of how we raised each other as we were growing up, as they were growing up. So there's all of this stuff that you're starting to bring out in me that I haven't had a chance, that I haven't talked about in a while. One of the difficulties is that at my age, the friends that you have, as you were asking, most of them have passed, have transitioned, and they're now ancestors. And you think back on them, and you want to be a part of them again, and you wonder where they are, you want their advice, you want to talk to them, and you realize that spiritually you are still connected.
Yes, sir.
And that you can have those conversations, and that you can get their advice, and you can get their comfort and their love by meditating and having dreams about them, which makes it almost as good as having them here. So there is no end to life. Life is eternal. And because of the fact that we are spiritual beings living a human experience right now, if we understand that, we understand that they are always going to be a part of us. They're always going to be around us and a part of us. It gives us a better, stronger feeling about who we are, and the shoulders we stand on, but then also the arms that hold us up when we fall.
I agree. And it's to be from a younger generation, I would say it is enriching to hear you say and talk about how important it is, and even in transition to still be connected to the ones that we've lost. And I think about my wife and I got married in 2014. And I want to say a lot of the elders that were there that I can think of, well, on my end has passed away. So my mom passed away. Brother Yusef was there. I know you definitely know him. He passed away. Mom Carolyn passed away. But I still feel a deep and secure connection to each of them because of the time that I spent with them in the physical while they were still here. And I think that sense of spirituality is lacking today. I think that sense of connection, or that yearning for the connection, is lacking. And I think a lot of it is just because the younger generation doesn't know how to make that connection, doesn't understand how important it is to still be able to, as you like to be called, Mzee, you know what I mean, tune into your elders, you know what I mean? It's just as you can honor a person in life. I just put this on Facebook the other day. It was like, you can equally honor a person in life the same way that you can honor them through their transition as well, based upon how you live. And it's they're both equally important.
Yeah. Well, the beauty of it is that once you understand it and accept who you are, that you are a spiritual being, you understand that they are spiritual beings as well. But as your ancestors, they're a part of you. They're always with you. The DNA that they have has been passed to you. So you have parts of them inside of you, okay? And all of their knowledge and all of their experiences are available to you spiritually, if you search for it, if you spend the time believing and understanding that is the way of the world. That's the way of the universe, that everything is spiritual, and the energy of the creator is in all of us, and the energy of our ancestors and our parents and our grandparents and and all along those lines is a part of us, both spiritually and physically,
Yes, sir.
through DNA, so that you're never alone, because you have this massive group of people that goes back. I got a piece online one day about you have one father, one mother, and two grandparents, and two grandfathers, and two grandmothers, and things along those. And it just went back in terms of the numbers of people, great, 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 greats that are all a part of your family, who are all a part of you as well, because their DNA and their spirit has been passed down from generation to generation to you. So you're made up of all of these people who have existed, who are still exist, because they are spirit and energy. And it just gives you a sense of not being alone.
Yeah.
That you have people to turn to, even though you may not see them, and you may not have the conversations that you had with them before, but you can still have those conversations.
Yes,
and
sir.
you can still get information back from them.
Yep. And you're always connected. It's once again, I think it goes back to whether or not, if you know that a connection is still available, and being able to, like, how do you express spirituality to somebody else who might not have experienced it for themselves? And I think with everything that's happening in the world right now, we need more of that than ever to really be covered, to really embrace your walk in a world that still has a lot of negativity going on, but to realize you're covered, you're protected, you're connected to all of these spiritual beings is truly important. You know, I walk around with this pendant every day. You know what I mean? It's symbolic to me of a connection with me and my mom, you know, and it's just, we have those connections. The signs are always there. It's whether or not if our eyes and ears are opened up to accept them. So,
yeah, I think the other part of it is that my generation, and I think each generation feels the same way, that they have not given the generation behind them all that they have to give. Particularly in my generation, and during the 70s and 80s, particularly the 80s, once everybody graduated from college and began to do get their first jobs or move into corporations or things along those lines, there was a separation between my generation and the community. And the community meaning the younger kids, the younger people, the next generation behind us. And there was a lot to be passed on that we had gained and we had known and we had learned that needed to be passed on from generation to generation. And we kind of lost ourselves in that we did not actually fulfill those responsibilities. I'm feeling pretty good about how my family gave of themselves to the community, was always a part of the community on some level or another, either by running programs or being part of programs, or just being somebody on the street that people could come to and talk to, and things along those lines. So it is an important part, what you're saying. It is a difficult thing also to begin to have people understand that spiritualness that we as people of African descent have, and that it gets lost. It got lost in the Ma'afa when we were brought here. Everything was stripped from us: our names, our religion, our spirituality, our ability to carry on our traditions and our rituals. But it was always there, though, and that there were groups and individuals that held on to that knowledge, that held on to that spirituality, and continued to pass it on. And it did not cover the entire population who were involved in the enslavement of our people, but there were enough that it's beginning now, I think, to rise again.
Yeah.
And the great rising that's taking place now because of this pandemic. One of the things that I've learned from this pandemic is that the way to deal with it, the way to survive in it, the way to grow in it is to evolve.
Yes, sir.
And we have to evolve, and it's telling us you have to evolve. This is a period in time in the history of the universe where everything is changing. And it's important for us to understand that the way that our people, our original people lived, and the connection that they have with the universe, and the connection that the Dogon have with the Sirius star, and being able to see that and getting the knowledge from that, it's there and it's coming out, and it's time for us to be able to go back, as people say, for Sankofa, to bring that knowledge forward, for us to be able to survive as this universe is changing, as the world is changing. And you can see it in the politics that exist in this country now, and how negative that it's becoming on one side. The land, the home of the brave and the land of the free is turning out to be the prison of the innocent. And we're falling victims of it when we were never really victims before. And it's the only way we bring ourselves out of that is to search back into ourselves and bring our history and our knowledge that has been given to us, that has been a part of us for our entire lives. Our family gave it to us. Our ancestors gave it to our family. And it's important for us to search it now and evolve to the point where we can pass it on to our children and take the time. And when I say our children, I'm not just talking about our born children, our blood children. I'm talking about generationally, to be able to move beyond this period of time in the thought process that is manipulating us to do things that we would normally not do. And that the cruelty and the violence that is existing in this world now has always been there. It's how we got here to the diaspora, through the Ma'afa, the violence. And it's important for us now to seriously consider how we evolve and bring our people to a new level, to a new plateau in terms of knowledge, understanding, and our ability to be able to survive and cultivate this world as we've always done.
You made me think of something. One, when you talked about how to get by is to evolve through what you're going through. And I know that you also were a part of the New York State Assembly. I want to say you might have been in the Ways and Means Committee, but you look at where we are right now and what's going on. I know New York State just had some what's the word they say now? Bombshell news or something like that. Well, what's going on when you look at our leaders? So what's going on in that aspect, and how does our leadership impact what happens and how people get involved or don't get involved based on the representation of people that they see. And, that's why I think it's equally important to be able to, I always say, you learn from the successes and failures of people who look like you. So for me, to be able to see someone like yourself, to be able to understand your history, to be able to understand how you have been able to live and thrive throughout several different time periods in life. I'm just, as you were speaking, I'm just sitting there, I was like, well, man, you know what? You lived through that. You lived through that. You lived through that. How has it been transitioning through all of these changes, from riots to seeing us as a people get a chance to have a part of the political pie, or how has it been living through all of these different eras?
Yeah. I guess it would be a lot easier if you looked at it that way. When you're going through it, you don't necessarily see it as an error that's taking place. You just know what's happening to you at that particular point in time. I think what's happening now, everybody sees what's happening with this pandemic and how big an influence, tragic, violent influence that it has on everybody's life. There's no way you cannot see this as an era that we're going through. And the reaction, what is your reaction to this? How do you keep it from driving you crazy? Because people are getting sick and people are dying in massive numbers. The kind of numbers it's even difficult to even put in your head or come out your mouth and understand. And I think that what we need to do, and what I think we're learning to do, is having programs like yours where these kinds of discussions are taking place, where people begin to open up about what they're feeling and what's going on with them and how it relates to other people. Because you find out that what's happening with me is no different than what's happening with you. I mean, the numbers may be different. You may lose more people. You may have more people who are sick, or things along those, or people in your family who you're not able to see, and the relationships. But one of the, interestingly enough, one of the things that I think has helped in terms of our ability to evolve is this Zoom.
Yes.
This Zoom has allowed us to have the conversations that we haven't been able to have in our houses with the friends and the people that we know and love. We had rehearsals for my daughter's wedding on Zoom. Okay. And we were able to get all the people who were involved in the wedding together at one place at one time in a conversation to talk about it. Now that's something that technology, I say bravo to technology for that. It did provide something for us that was lacking. And that connection, conversation, it's not the same, it's different, but it's important because it provides you the opportunity to see the people that you love and to have conversations with the people that you love and keep the connection going, because you can connect with people over massive periods of massive distances. Okay, spiritually, but you can do it now visually as well. And I think it makes a great difference. And it's part of what I was talking about before about evolving, about finding a new way of doing, a new way of being, and a new way of accomplishing the things that are necessary for us as a people to survive. And that's very important. And there are a couple of programs that I've been on that I really, because I'm here, I'm reading, I'm writing, I'm kind of isolated in here, and I'm putting this together, and I'm saying, oh, does anybody know that our people did so and so, and they did such and such, and how do I get to them? Do I have to sit down and I have to write a book, and I got to go through a publisher, and I got to put it out for sale or whatever along the lines for people to understand it? No, I can talk to you and tell you about it. And you represent a larger group of people who are getting that information themselves. So that it is that evolution that we need to go through, that is being provided on some level through this technology called Zoom. My wife was into it first because her church is on Zoom,
Yep.
and all of her church meetings and Bible study and all of those kinds of things. And she said, let's talk to the kids. And I said, well, you can't get them all on the phone at the same time, because we were wedded to the telephone as a means of the communication that we were having. And the email is not the same thing, or even the text messages. It's not the same thing as being able to see somebody's face and their expression and the smile on your face and things along those lines that make communication between human beings so important and so necessary.
To make it intimate.
Yes. Well, as much as it can be. Yeah. But I mean, it's certainly much better than. I used to tell the kids, when you have a birthday, they send you a text message, "Happy birthday." I said, that don't count. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, you haven't even spoken to me yet. You can call me on the phone or something, but you can text me. You can text me and all you want to, but I'm not paying any attention. First of all, I'm not looking at texts. But if you Zoom me, you got to call me and let me know that something's going on and that we're doing this and blah, blah, blah. And then we get to talk and we get to see each other. And you get to even in a visual sense, play with your kids, play with your grandkids, have those conversations and things like that. So we are finding some ways of communicating.
Definitely.
And it may be an opportunity, because we are a visual people, it may be an opportunity for us to be able to make that step that you're looking for in terms of communicating with people and being able to keep the knowledge, the information, the love, the stories, the history flowing. And this may be one way of doing it, but just one way of doing it, and hoping and praying that even this will be done soon, so that we can actually go back to hugging and kissing.
Yeah. And what I've learned too is that, I'll say this last point is that we have access to almost everything and anything, which is both good and bad now, right? And technology is both good and bad, depending on how you use it, what you're involved in. And it's kind of like, for a lot of people, it's almost an excuse too to not do a deep dive, to go a little bit further than just what you get on the surface level. And it's just like, being able to become an avid reader and really finding out the context behind what was going on takes you to take a little bit more of a deeper dive than just a Google search. So we got access to so much. You got access to technology, and in a lot of instances, some people might not be utilizing it or taking advantage of it. And my pastor always says, he says, if you come out of this pandemic the same as you went in, you were doing something wrong. Right. So, that evolution part that you spoke of, I think hit the nail on the coffin, because you better be finding ways to be creative, to evolve, or time will just move on without you. And you'll be stuck there feeling like a dinosaur when really you had other opportunities to evolve along with it. But,
Exactly.
Yeah. Let me see, man. I know that you did on top of the rest of your scholarly literature, you did actually pen 2 books, A Far Cry from Freedom and
The Mysterious
Black Migration. Nice.
Yeah, The Far Cry from Freedom and The Mysterious Black Migration.
Yes.
The Far Cry from Freedom was the first book. I'm online. I'm reading. I'm looking at all of this that has to do with enslavement. And I'm doing my family history. And it because my family has been here in New York State for, well, the area of New York State for as long as it is, the colony, the state, whatever. I began to see that what took place to people of African descent in New York State from the 1600s to now is the story of my family, the actual story of my family, the enslavement, the abolition, the gradual abolition, all of those things that the discrimination, the Jim Crow, all of those things that you hear about that that went on in the South, that you think went on in the South, began in the North.
Definitely.
Okay. And it then just transferred itself as you moved the population of enslaved people from the North, because originally that's where they were going, Virginia, the Mason-Dixon line. As they began to move the population of enslaved people more south, all of those institutions that were developed in the North moved down with them as well. So there isn't anything that took place in the South that didn't start in the North. Okay, because that's where they first civilized, quote unquote, this country. So I'm doing my family history, and I'm saying that this is their story. I need to tell people about what actually took place. You would be surprised how many people did not know that there was enslavement in New York State.
Yep.
And at such a level that at one point in time, New York City had the largest population of enslaved people in this country. Okay. That's where the ships came to New York City because of its large seaport. And it moved up and down the Hudson River because it was a perfect pathway for people to be able to move and settle and develop along the line because of the resources that existed up north, further up north from New York City. The land that was available, the beaver, the animals, the resources that were then used and sent back to Europe. We had small amounts of cotton. We had small amounts but the sugar and the coffee and all of those major products that were produced in the Caribbean. What we had up here were a different type of resources. The animal skins that they used, the beaver population that got wiped out in this area because they were sending them to Europe so they can make hats or they can make clothing from the fur to protect them from the winters that existed in Europe. So I'm saying New York State has a story to tell, and it's not a story that people want to hear, okay, or want to believe, or even accept. But it was interesting how people were educated about New York State and its role of enslavement, and its role within the Constitution of the United States, and its ability to oppress and segregate and basically destroy the family of African Americans in this country. So I'm writing my story, I'm writing my family story, and it turns out that this book, A Far Cry from Freedom, is the story of my family. But it's also the story of thousands and thousands of people of African descent who came to New York State and the North. and it teaches them that all that you see when they talk about up south or up or and
Mhm.
how much better it was in the north than it was in the south. Um, hopefully they'll read this book and other books like it and understand that America is America, and what exists in one part of the country exists in the other part of the country. It's all there, and it's all materialistic. It's all about making money. It's all about subjugating. It's all
Yep.
about discrimination, and it's all about um, anti-Black terrorism. And this anti-Black terrorism, yeah, there's racism, yeah, there's segregation, but this anti-Black terrorism that is producing the killing, the massive killing of people of African descent by police, that is creating this um, um, criminal, the judicial system
Yep.
that's placing so many of our young people in jail, in prison, ruining their lives. What do they have when they come out? Okay, what kind of jobs? They can't vote, they can't work, they can't get certain jobs, they can't do certain things. Their lives are destroyed during this period, during this
Yeah.
recovery that they have after they're released. And it's all terror. It's terrorism that's taken place, that's been going on since the first time, since the Ma'at, when we first came to this country, or first were brought to this country. We didn't come to this. We're not migrants.
Yep.
Okay. We did not immigrate to this country. We were captives. We were brought here, prisoners of war. So anyway, that's where that book came from.
Okay.
Talking with my grandmother about it, she helped me a lot understand. She understood that we had 3 generations of family. She could go back in her mind 3 generations. And as we worked on our family history, we were able to go back 9 generations so far. Okay. And through DNA, we've been able to identify the fact that on my father's family side, we're Yoruba from Nigeria.
Yep.
And on my mother's side, we're Tikar from Cameroon, through the DNA that connects us to our ancestors, that tells our story. But the story is not just about where we came from. The story is about the trauma that has been passed from generation to generation. And all of that you got these young kids who are in school and they just freak out and they're mad and they're crazy sometimes. And they're angry and they don't know why. Okay. A lot of it has to do with this trauma that they're going through now, living in this world. Okay. A friend of theirs is hit by a stray bullet and is killed. Okay. A father is sent off to prison. Okay. That's their individual present day trauma, but they're also carrying the trauma of generations of people of African descent that's passed down to them. And we don't deal with that. Okay. There is no place for young African American kids to go to get the help that they need to be able to deal with this trauma that they have. Okay. There was a superintendent of the school district at Schenectady who I had a couple of conversations with. And his whole thing was about this trauma and identifying this trauma and setting up ways of dealing with the trauma that the kids that he saw every day in their school, okay, were going through. And understanding that it's accepted that the trauma that Jewish people go through because of the Holocaust is accepted as reality. But the trauma that people of African descent have gone through and continue to go through is not accepted as reality.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's our responsibility to make that clear, to bring that out, to show that to the world, to deal with our children, because our children are so engulfed in this trauma that they're
And they may
not
not
really.
even know it though.
No.
Imagine being so much and so far engulfed in it and not even realizing what's going on around you. You mentioned earlier that the myth about being in the North and how the North would put you so far away from slavery, but once you take a deep dive into history, you'll realize how much that New York played, or New York's role in that. You know what I mean? From being the at one point in time, the place that had the most slaves.
Yeah.
Also, think about, you talked about the schools. Think about a lot of the schools being named after former slave owners or slave masters. It wasn't until with that mentoring program model, we started taking the kids down to New York for their slavery exhibit. I can't think of the name of the museum. Every year they do this major slavery exhibit. And I got a chance to see the history of New York, from even places like, let's say you go to Philip Livingston, or you got Schuyler, or you got all of these different places that are named after people who were slave owners and has a rich slave history. Imagine going to school to a place that was named after somebody that you didn't know what their full history was. So you can't even realize that that's part of the entire package and processing too. So, but you just made me think about it, just realizing, like, in real time, we got to deal with all types of traumas that you're currently experiencing, as well as traumas that you might not even know are a part of your being.
Right. They're part of your DNA. They're a part of who you are. They visit you just as much as the ones that you deal with on a daily basis. So that's where that book came from. And I focused on this gradual abolition, because the gradual abolition was the period in time prior to the actual emancipation, quote unquote, of Black people in New York State. And it is, if you look at it seriously, it's the precursor of foster care, where they actually took children away from enslaved people and put them in homes that were established by the state, or put them in homes of other individuals who were looking for cheap labor or free labor. They were giving away, and I have difficulty saying that, they were giving away children to slave owners, okay, so that they would have people to work their farms, and they would give them away for free, okay? They would just take the children from their mothers and give them to these slave owners. And also, when they gave the children to the slave owners, they also gave them a maintenance fee to take care of those kids, okay? So it's similar in so many ways, and the precursor of foster care, except this was something that was more diabolical in its inception and its practice. So I got into that piece. I found that little piece and went over to the New York State Library, and there's volumes of records, because when money is involved, there's records.
Yeah.
There's receipts, there's explanations, there's discussions, there's who did what did who, what names. And in this book, there are so many names of enslaved Africans, that I hope that it would give people an opportunity, if they had any idea or any inkling of where their ancestors came to New York State, where they were, that they would be able to trace them and be able to track them. some pictures, but mostly names of families that they were enslaved with or that they were freed from, and they took new names. But an effort to try and allow people to find their families if they were doing genealogy on some kind of level. So that's where that book came from. The second one, The Mysterious Black Migration, it deals with a period in time where this gradual abolition actually took place, and enslavers were given the prerogative of just freeing their enslaved people. It was during the time of the Revolutionary War, the latter part of the 1700s, the early part of the 1800s. And the state was divided, loyalists and revolutionaries, I guess you would call them. And part of the state was, so they moved the agricultural production from the southern part of New York State to the northern part of New York State, because the southern part of New York State was colonized heavily by the British, that they were there, that they owned it, that they had the farms, that they were producing the crops that were being either sent to Europe to feed Europe, or they were being sent throughout the state and throughout New England to feed the people in this country. So they moved the production of agriculture to the north. Mm-hmm. And when they did that, the enslavers in the South had no reason to have enslaved people anymore, because they had no longer the production that was necessary. So they freed them. They just said, you can go. Our people are so intuitive that they understood that we got no job no more. We got no place to live. We got no work to do. We can't take care of our families. What do? We follow the production of the food. And so they moved up north, they migrated. And this book talks about a group of 3,000 African Americans who moved to Washington County and developed and started a new economy up there, agricultural production and also textile production. And it wasn't just people from New York State, it was people from Massachusetts, from New England, even people from as far away as Pennsylvania, all migrated up to Washington County and settled Washington County and made it the #1 producer of cotton, linen, and wool in the 13 colonies. So this goes on for a period of time, maybe 20 years.
Okay.
And Black people are making money, and they're buying, because they're all free. And they're buying land, and they're producing crops on their own, and they're developing textiles, and they're working in these factories, the nascent manufacturing that's taking place. And so then you have the War of 1812 comes, and Thomas Jefferson, who's president at the time, puts an embargo on products going from England and France to the United States and back and forth, because he doesn't want to get involved in the war, being taken advantage of by one or the other. So what that does, it shuts down all of the production that's taking place in New York State and New England. And now people of African descent are in the same boat that they were in when they were living in the southern part of New York State. All this production stops.
Yeah.
And now where do they go? They either go back to where they came from, or they go out west. And it tells that story of these families. One of the families is my family. And this is why I'm saying that these books are more biography of my family than they are, well, not than they are of the history of people of African descent, but they're combined. And it's the reason why I wrote them in the first place. So that's the story of those two books. Very everything that I'm about is about family, and it turns out that these books are about family as well.
Okay. And I know you have a very, very large family. I want to say, let me see if I got this right. 6 kids, 21 grandkids, and four great grandkids.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I get started late. But you know, it's it's been the most exciting period of my life. These grandchildren, because they just kept coming, you know. And I remember one Christmas when the kids used to come home for Christmas. Now it's more difficult because they got all these kids that they got to move around and they're living in different parts of the country. But they came home one Christmas, and I brought them downstairs here because this is where my office is. And I said, listen, how come I got 6 kids and I only have 1 grandchild? Okay. Now, why did I say that? Okay. Because by the next Christmas, or at least next New Year's, I had 4 more grandkids. And then they just kept coming and coming and coming. And it's such a beautiful thing. And they and the grandkids, they call me Baba, which is actually father, but I let them call me Baba. And and my wife, they call Aya, which is actually mother in Yoruba. But they are the lights of my life, man. They just make everything right. And they'll call you on the phone and you talk to them on the phone, or when they do come. My youngest son, Jamal, he's 35.
Okay.
He has 7 kids. Okay. He lives in Phoenix. And one of my the banes I have with the pandemic, I have a number of them, but one of them is I have 4 great grandchildren who I haven't seen.
Yeah.
I have 2 grandchildren who I haven't seen. And one of my grandkids is 2 years old. Yeah. I haven't seen him. I see him on Zoom, but that's not really the same thing. I mean, it does suffice on one kind of level, but not on the emotional, you know, physical kind of level. But they've been good for me. They've been very good for me. Yeah.
Okay. Let me see, man. I got I'm gonna hit you with 2 more questions before I let you go on and go, because one, I could probably stay here and talk with you all day, but I do want to be respectful to your time and make sure that when the audience does see this, they get to know all of the jewels and the important parts about you. I have a question for you, only because you mentioned this word, and maybe you can help to kill an argument that a buddy and I are having. You have lived through several eras, as I mentioned earlier, and you've gotten to see from where we were to where we are today. In your definition, how would you describe a revolutionary?
Interesting question. How would I describe a revolutionary? It's interesting because at one point in time, I knew a definition,
Hmm.
but that's long since gone. A revolutionary to me would be anyone who has a sense of history, who has a sense of well, who has a sense of ma'at. You familiar with the term ma'at?
No, sir.
M-A-A-T with some asterisks on it. Ma'at was in the Kemetic, the ancient Egyptian cosmology. Ma'at was the value system that the world was created on. Ma'at is truth, justice, righteousness, balance, order, reciprocity, and harmony. The Kemetic people used that as their value system. Everything was based on Ma'at, from the Nusret Bidi all the way down, the pharaoh, all the way down to the common person. Ma'at ruled everything. It ruled the universe. Okay, that's how everything was in balance. That's why when you died, or when you transitioned, your life, your heart, which represented your life, was balanced against the feather of Ma'at. Okay, and there are 42 negative confessions, they call them. I have not murdered. I have not stolen from a friend. I have not coveted my wife. All of those 10 commandments and other value systems that have been stolen from Egyptian Kemetic philosophy. Ma'at was what ruled the world. In the beginning was the word, and the word was Ma'at. Okay. An individual's ability to move along in the afterlife was based on how they were valued or rated or balanced against Ma'at. And a revolutionary is a person who walks the path of Ma'at, who believes in the truth, in justice, righteousness, the balance of the world, truth, justice, righteousness, balance, order, reciprocity, and harmony. A true revolutionary understands those values. A true revolutionary lives those values and presents those values when you meet them. You can see it in them. You can see it in their eyes. You can feel it in your heart. Revolutionary is not necessarily somebody who walks around with a black beret and a gun strapped to their hip or things along those lines. It's what's inside somebody that you can see, that you can feel, that they are for people. Okay, they are for the earth. They are for life as it should be. Okay, not materialism, not money that they're making, or the possessions that they have, or the cars that they have. A different value system. Okay, and you'll find that those are the people who are leading the quote unquote revolutions that take place throughout this world. They see how poor people and marginalized people and disenfranchised people are being treated. And they have to, because of who they are, respond to that. They have to make an effort to see that those people are able to live a perfect life. as much as you can. Tear down systems that exist that oppress, subjugate, separate. A real true revolutionary is an advocate of Ma'at. They have that in their being. It's who they are. They're people who you may not think are like that, but you see them involved in all of these efforts to make the world a better place. And that's about as close to a revolutionary as I can
Hey,
get.
I will take it. I will take it. And thank you for that. Yeah, it's been an ongoing discussion. So I figured there was no better person at this time that I could get to weigh in on that one. So thank you for that.
I want to say one thing though. My wife told me earlier when we were practicing this, the camera on my tablet is over on this side, but the picture of you is over on this side. So I'll be looking over here at you and people be saying, why is he looking over there? I should be looking over here at the camera. So you all have to forgive me. I'm still learning this technology, but as long as I'm getting across to you what I'm saying, it doesn't matter how I'm looking at you. Okay.
I agree. My last two questions for you are fairly easy, but probably one of my favorite questions that I ask everyone that I interview. What's your favorite place to visit in the Capital District area or Albany? What's your favorite place to visit in Albany and why?
In Albany?
Yeah.
My favorite place to visit would be Washington Park on a Sunday afternoon when they used to have the drumming in the park. Oh, it was beautiful. They had the drumming, people would come in flutes. There'd be Hispanic, Latinos, there'd be Africans, there'd be African Americans. They'd all have the kunga drums and the bongos, and oh, it was a beautiful period of time. And they do it now too. But it was always in the afternoon on a Sunday. And Washington Park would be the place where I would go. I'd bring the kids. We'd sit down there, we'd make a couple of sandwiches and stuff and just sit down and listen to the drumming and yeah, it would be Washington Park.
Okay. All right.
In the Capital District, my favorite place to go would be Saratoga, because that's where I actually met my wife. Okay, and we go up there. We were actually married in Saratoga, and we go up there every year for our anniversary.
Nice.
And there are some restaurants up there that Muzone House that's up there has a very, very rich African American history to it. It used to be owned by an African American family, and painted on the wall are pictures of the family, the daughters and the other members of the family. It's a house that got turned into a restaurant, and they fix Cajun food, gumbo and things along those lines. But that would be my favorite place in the Capital District.
Okay, listen. I'll be back in Albany on Friday. I might have to head out that way if it's still open.
It's season, brother. Go to the ATM first. Yeah, it's track season, so everything goes up a little bit.
Okay.
If they're open,
Okay.
But anyway.
Okay, not a problem. And let me see, man. My final question for you tonight is actually going to be, I have an inkling of where you might go, but what about your life's path are you most proud of?
Oh, wow. I would say the period of time that I was working at the Urban League. I realized that even though I'd been instructed, if you will, in in community organizing or community work from my grandmother and my mother. At the Urban League, when I was working at the Urban League, I realized that it was not what I did, it's who I was. And I had found my place in the world, I thought. And the only thing that tore me away from it was going to Africa. And I left the Urban League to go to Africa. But that's the place I thought I did the most good. We did the most work. We increased when I first got there, they had a budget of $116,000 with staff and secretaries and rent and all of that. It wasn't anywhere near enough. By the time I left, our budget was $2 million.
Nice.
We were able to do programs, I think, that impacted the community in terms of jobs, in terms of housing, we even had a bank in the Urban League, okay, where people could go to get mortgages. Cohoe Savings Bank had a branch in the Urban League. We had an office in Saratoga. We had an office in Troy. We almost had an office in Schenectady. But I think that's where I did my best work. And I think that we had the most influence on people, marginalized communities, or as one of my mentors, Arthur Eve, would say, the least of God's children.
Okay. Hey, listen, and just for historical significance, was the Urban League at the time when you were involved with it right on the corner of Livingston and Timbrook?
Yes,
that? Okay. All right. You know,
Yeah.
I always find such beauty and joy in understanding those aspects and realizing, you know, that we come from a rich history and rich heritage in Albany and the Capital District area, and being able to partner up or to converse with individuals like yourself helps to give me those stories so that I can keep them going as well. So, Brother Stewart, I truly, or Mzee, I truly appreciate you taking the time out to explain a small part of your history, a small part of your path, and sharing your knowledge with the Black community. So I just want to thank you again for taking the time to open up your world to us and to the Capital District area. If there's anything that you would like to say as a parting gift to the Black community, the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say this has been a pleasure and a joy to talk with you today. It's particularly seeing when we started the conversation, for some reason, my air conditioning went off and it was real hot down here. But I appreciate the work that you're doing. I think it's very important for us to be able to see people in our community. Not that there's anything special about me in our conversation, but to be able to talk to a new person that I'm meeting for the first time, but having a conversation like we talked to each other many times before. And it's important for people to know that conversation is one of the most important things that we can have with each other. If we can't communicate with each other, we're in a world of trouble. When we begin to start drawing lines and separating people, or this person is this or that person is that, and we're all African Americans, all people of African descent, it it sets us back so much. And I think that as we evolve through this pandemic, programs like yours, efforts like yours, are going to be needed more and more. And our people are in a tough spot right now, particularly when it comes to the most important of all rights, of voting rights and being able to vote, and that trying to be taken away from us just when we're getting the hang of it. And how we're going to be able to make some changes. It's important for people to understand that things are going to get worse if we don't get better in our abilities to influence and make positive changes on this country, in this country, with the people that we elect. That we need to be able to have people like yourself put up the picture of what's going on, the movie, if you will, the video, if you will, of what is happening, and bringing these people on who are making real efforts to try and make changes. We also need to understand that it's the young people who are the most important in that process. And we need to know that they're thinking in the same way. So I'd also like to say that even though I'm doing reading and writing, that I have quite a bit of time on my hands to be able to volunteer to help with different programs. I do have a not-for-profit organization that works with other community-based organizations in terms of their infrastructure and their finances. I'm not pushing that as far as work is concerned, but I'm more than willing to volunteer to help in any organization that thinks that might be helpful. I'm easy to contact and willing to work.
Okay.
And I thank you very much for this opportunity. I feel better dusted off.
Hey, listen, thank you for allowing me to take you off the shelf. You haven't lost one step, brother. The Black community, we have been blessed to be able to be educated and been able to have a conversation with you. So thank you again. I look forward to telling your story and getting it out to the community. Everybody have themselves a great night. Brother Stewart, it's been a blessing. Thank you.
Peace. Peace.
Peace. Peace.
Keep climbing up the ladder. A Black Lives Matter. It matter. So all you young people, give me all. 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 Matter. A Black Lives Matter. They matter. A Black Lives Matter.